Why is historical fiction important? History is a long, winding river of people's lives, what they ate, what they wore, how they talked, and what they believed, or times that were extraordinary. Over the last two sessions, this being the second one, we've been exploring the concept of historical fiction, especially in relation to our continent, African historical fiction. We've had an interesting ride, an interesting journey along the way. We've scavenged through our bookshelves, we've rummaged through our boxes, and we could only share with you what we have found. So, welcome to another edition of Readership Reflections. My name is Shadi Fradipe.
Madeshola Ali, Kids Literary Circle.
Ogome from Esopip Africa.
And I'm Farida Ladikwajayi from the Bookworm Cafe. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is indeed. Okay, so Temiloluwa can't be with us today, but that's fine. And we might have someone pop in, during the session, all the way from Zimbabwe, a teacher. Her name is Sami. If she's available to pop in during her break time, we'll have her. If not, I'll do a one-to-one with her, and we'll include that on the video. So, this journey, Farida of the Bookworm Cafe, I'm going to hand over to you. What have you found out during this period of looking into historical fiction, especially where you are at the moment? Tell us where you are and what you've discovered, because we can see 1,000 books behind you. Tell us.
Well, it's been looking for, so I'm in Lagos, Nigeria. I own a bookstore, so that's what you see behind me. And we're discussing historical fiction, and I've been looking for historical fiction books written for children, and it's been difficult to find. I found a few.
You found a few. Okay. We're wondering why it's been a struggle, because it has been a struggle. What do you think, Ogowen?
Our Nigerian or African authors are not writing those type of books at this point. So maybe our authors have not discovered there is a gap in the market, or maybe perhaps our publishers have not discovered that there is this gap in the market that needs to be filled, or is it that we are not so interested in history? But we are. There are non-fiction books. We are, because non-fiction books exist, like I guess a lot of them written for children, but it's just the historical fiction that we don't have a lot of.
And you shared a book with us the last time called
Mr. Hem Meets Nelson Mandela.
And that we thought that was a perfect example, just for the purpose of it showing a presidential figure in the past and a morale around the story, a value behind the story. Because what we want to do with children is getting to know about historical characters, but also knowing that they lived extraordinary lives, and there could have been a reason why they were able to live these extraordinary lives. What values did they have? What principles did they stand for? What made them extraordinary? And if it's a time, what makes that time extraordinary? So, before we go into what we brought into the room, although I was hoping we'd have a lot of titles by the time we come back, it's slightly, I wouldn't say disappointing, because I can, even if I'm wagging my finger, I've got 4 fingers pointing at me as well, being an author. Adeshola, tell us, what's your view on this topic? Why is historical fiction important to young children?
Okay, historical fiction is important, so that the young children can learn about the heroes and the heroines, the past heroes and heroines, because they learn this at school. And what better way to let it stick to them than put it in a story, you know. We have some upcoming titles, but we actually have to do more. There's actually a gap and it needs to be filled. And, you know, you can never have enough books. So this is for all the authors out there, including me, to work on something. You know, there's so many heroes and heroines. I mean, we've seen Shaka Zulu, we've seen all of that. We have our own Tafawa Balewa, so many. So the work is out there for us to do the research and come up with a story. So it's a challenge for all upcoming children's picture book authors to get on that.
It's important that we look at genre, because at the end of the day, we are readership detectives, but we can only learn about our future by learning from our past. That's what we were taught. That's what we were taught. And we have a serious, I'm not sure about any other African country, but Nigeria in particular, we have a serious issue because we actually did intentionally sweep history under the carpet. So I don't think there's any wonder why we don't have historical fiction books. Yes.
That the fact that it was history has been swept under the carpet in schools inspire authors, because there was obviously a gap, because even in schools history had been swept under the carpet. So somehow to think of a way to fill the gap, maybe let's make it into stories, let independent publishers publish stories to fill the gap. So I don't know if the fact that history was swept under the carpet is to blame.
Yes.
I don't know, you know, sometimes I'm just wondering out loud that perhaps did you read a lot of historical fiction in secondary school while you were at school? You didn't?
No, I didn't.
I like the point where you said that when some things are swept under the gap, it can give authors inspiration on what to write. Also, perhaps when you read certain types of genre in school, that could also inspire you, right? Because a lot of the authors, African or Nigerian authors now, who are writing science fiction or those type of books, we didn't have indigenous science fiction books, right? But they gained their inspiration from reading international science fiction books, and that now inspired them to bring this genre into our own setting as Africans, using our own culture, our own mythology. Mythology is something we grew up with. Folk tales is something we grew up with. So we see a lot of that, right? In our writing, in our books, in our authors. I think so. Farida, you can correct me, please, if I'm wrong as well.
Not for children, but yeah.
For children, okay. Yes, so I'm thinking also maybe because a lot of us didn't read that type of genre set in our culture. Maybe perhaps we've not really given thought to it, you know, perhaps.
I completely agree with you, because science fiction is universal. Anybody can read science fiction and, you know, be inspired by it.
There's a huge gap to be filled. There's a huge gap. And I don't think it takes that much. Think about the book that Temiloluwa shared with us last week. You know, for instance, here we have a program called Horrible Histories. That's how they introduce all the histories of the kings and the queens, and they're called horrible histories. I mean, you dare not say horrible Buhari's regime in Nigeria and create content from it. So it's completely different altogether. So let's see what we brought into the room. Let's see. I'm excited. I'm going to go first only because I'd want to show this to you. I told you I was going to have a rummage. I didn't find much. I have 2 books, but I'm going to just show you one of them. I came across this, and I came across this while I was still in Nigeria, and actually met the author. And it's called The Adventures of Bayajida. And it's actually a story about, people don't know whether So it's been termed as a legendary figure, because even though it's historical, it's not been validified as a true story. So for me, it could pass for historical fiction. And it's a story about Bayajida, who traveled from Baghdad all the way to Nigeria, northern Nigeria, Borno State, met a family. He was a warrior. He traveled with his warriors, got married to a lady, and then went to sojourn, because I think her father wanted him to be the warrior, just be at the war front. So he kept validifying himself as a warrior because he had married this young lady. Along the way, he came into a village where there was an old woman that took him in, and there was an issue in that village, in which there was a snake that lived in the well, and that snake would be there apart from on a Friday. So Fridays were the only days when they were able to fetch water from the well. So he conquered the snake, and he got married to the king's daughter, and that's the story. So in terms of, it gives, there's certain virtues around and principles around the book itself. But in terms of whether it's historical fiction or whether it's legendary fiction, I'm not sure, but I like the fact that it's in comical form. Let's see if I can spotlight. It's in, I doubt that this is I've seen some other forms on the internet. Let me spotlight.
Of the same story?
Same story. If you Google it, you'd see that there are lots. Speak of it. Yes. So,
but that name Baba Yiga, is it anybody of historical, some king? Is it real life? Is it fiction or non-fiction?
Well, if you Google it, it says it's being called a legendary name. So it's a legend. We're not sure if this person actually existed, but we do know that there was migration. In terms of the religion, in terms of the Muslim faith, there was, the Muslim faith did come into Nigeria, and this person, the Bayajida himself was a Muslim, and the reason, although the book doesn't say that, but the reason how I know is when he left his wife for a short period and went on the further sojourn, and the king of that land said, "Come and marry my daughter," he had no qualms. So yeah, I'll marry her. So, I can have a second wife. And so, it does point to, there's no mention of Islam or anything, but it just does point the finger to the fact that, it was from the land of Baghdad, and even their dressing, it's very in line with the faith.
So I've come across a book called Bayajida and the Great Snake, and that one was fiction. So it's probably a real person who lives. I think is the Bayajida character is a real person. Well, of course, this is a story told in a story, so it's fiction, historical fiction.
And the moral that I get from it is, it sounds as if the father-in-law to the woman he married at first just wanted to use him as a warrior, just push him further to the war front. Just, their soldiers weren't going to war, it was his soldiers, and they got to a point where all his soldiers were killed. And in the further he went, in the search of, he got to a point where he was searching for food. Obviously he became desolate, and the woman that took him in told him about this well. So, he probably wasn't being treated nicely in that family, and came to a place where he was being honored by the king and allowed to marry his daughter. So that's my book.
Yeah, so my books are books from the OBMTT series. I read these books like years ago, really. It's Adventures of OBMTT. traveler spender. So these two characters travel to different parts of Nigeria, and it's an adventure book. So there's usually like a pendant they have to find, and that is hidden somewhere. So they need clues, and then they end up in this setting that we're learning about. So this particular one is the hidden temple of Ogiso, which is like a Benin kingdom, I believe. And so the adventure takes them to that temple, and that's where the what they're looking for will be found. It's 7 books, like I said, and then this is book 3. This is Black Okuta. So the setting of this one takes them to Ile-Ife, right, the ancient city of Ile-Ife. Each story is a continuation of the previous one. So they'll travel from where they are in Benin, right, to Ile-Ife, while trying to find clues to solve a problem. Basically, there are different characters introduced in the books, but the 2 main characters are these 2 children. And in each of the books, so for instance, this one that Ile-Ife, I think they meet a king. So he also talks about the king or the royal figure in all of these places. So while children are reading, they're learning not just about the places, but the royal figures that are present in these places. So that's book 3. So there's book 4. I can't find it. And then this is book 5. This one is Shango. So it takes them to Shagamu, so Katunga, somewhere called Katunga. I didn't think it was a real place, but I Googled it and I found out that there's actually somewhere called Katunga. So they moved from Shagamu and then ended up in Katunga. Since I got these, the author has released book 6 and book 7 now currently. So the children, I don't know if 7 is the end, but the way he ends it, it's almost like saying, where do you think they will go next? So if children have been following the series from the beginning, they're thinking of where the next destination is. Children love adventure. So they're learning about ancient place settings and historical figures while they're going on an adventure. So that's why I like them.
I am in love with those books already. I'm completely taken. So in terms of other, because I know that it sounds as if it's a series. So are authors that have written each of the volumes, or is it
same person?
Same person. Oh, and what's the name of the author?
His name is O.T. Bego.
Interesting.
Written somewhere here. O.T. Bego.
Ah, okay. That is someone to look out for, isn't it? Definitely. Yeah. Any contributions to that wonderful series being shared with us?
Do you know if it's a traditional publisher? Sorry.
No, so it's not it's published by Obi and Titi. So he has a company and he has these books published. He also creates content for that highlight different places in Africa. Just like, I don't know if you know Bino and Fino.
Yes.
Yeah, so something like what Bino and Fino do. So he also does that as well. And I think there are books that we should really have here.
Yes.
Because they're really interesting.
Wow. I mean, this is the kind of content that we need, that, that shouldn't be hidden. It should, this is kind of content should be. And I love the fact that it blends the place, the places with the rulership and the journey that they take. I just love that narrative. It sounds like the series itself is a whole narrative.
You should also mention that his book, one of his books was shortlisted for 2019 LNG Prize for Literature, the Nigeria Prize for Literature. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. One where Judy Dada won, was awarded the prize. So one of his books was shortlisted.
Which of the titles? Do you know which title?
Great Walls of Benin.
The Great Walls of Benin. Okay, so we've got another book on Benin, and I think the Benin Kingdom in itself is, is a very prominent part of our history and our culture. So that's awesome. Great,
And a lot of
fantastic.
people are writing about Benin these days.
We need to diversify. We need to kind of like get our feelers out a bit more. Okay, fantastic. Okay.
So my book is Shaka Zulu Learns to Dance. Okay, that's my book. It's by Kunda Kids. It's a story about an African king called Shaka Zulu who couldn't dance. And then there was a dance coming up and he was the king. He had to showcase. And so one day he just heard some music and he started to dance. And his dance was actually really good. So, you know, there's something that you say, you won't dance until you get the right tune or the right music or the music that, syncs with you. Just like children, there's a quote, I don't remember who wrote the quote. The right book, until you read the right book, you won't like reading or something like that, you know. So until he found his own method of dancing, he didn't find his tune, even though his dance was looking funny, but that was what he liked. And then because his friends gave him the confidence that, oh, I love how you're dancing. And then he built his confidence and he was able to go out to the dance and he was able to, you know, and everybody liked it and everybody came up with their own style. They called it the Shaka Zulu dance and he became popular for it. So, I mean, the most important lesson from this story for me is the confidence, you know, having the confidence, you know, when people cheer you on, you build up your confidence and then you're able to take on the world, you know. So if there's something you're trying to do, you don't know how to do it, or you're afraid, or, you know, just have to build up that confidence and just do it. And, you know, who knows, everybody might just like your own way of doing it. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
That's
and
what I really liked. And it has a lot of beautiful pictures. Loads of really beautiful pictures. When he was learning his dance. It's a really, really interesting story. A lot of children actually relate to this story because maybe there's something or the other they're trying to learn how to do. And then, you know, just reading this story, it just inspires you to, you know, don't look at what other people are saying around you. Just do what you have to do and you're good. Even adults, a lot of adults have this, you know, confidence, building up their confidence to do stuff. But, you know, just putting your mind to it, you can do anything. Even I'm trying to build up my mind. I have something next week I'm supposed to do. You know, I just found out today that, oh, okay, they want me to do it. And I'm like, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I'm comfortable doing it. But on second thoughts, you know, I just said, okay, maybe I should just give it a try. You know, you never can tell. You might actually be really good at it. And that's how it starts. And, you know, as adults, we face it. So children as well, they also face it. So books like this will come in handy a lot for all.
Thank you for sharing that book. Isn't it interesting that the things that children go through, they don't know that adults are actually going through those exact same emotions, you know, thinking about being scared or being worried about a presentation or, you know, something that you've got to do. Children go through those emotions all the time, but they don't, you know, little would they know that all adults go through the same emotions. So thank you for sharing that. Shaka Zulu, tell us about that name. Does it have any relevance to history? Or is it,
yes.
Tell us.
Okay, so the book actually tells us a little bit about it. Shaka Zulu is a real influencer. So he was one of the most influential monarchs in South Africa. So he's actually somebody in history.
Awesome.
But this story was just a fiction story made up.
That is a perfect example of historical fiction. Perfect example. Couldn't the kids have done it again this week?
Yeah.
Kunda kids have done it
Always.
again. Have done it again. Okay. Are we ready for the next book? If not, I've got a very okay. Just a sec, before you start, Ogawin, Sunny, do you know about Shaka Zulu? Have you ever heard of Shaka Zulu before today? Yes?
Sammy?
Okay, yes, I know about Shaka Zulu. The interesting thing about Shaka Zulu is some of my descendants are from Zulu Kingdom. So Shaka Zulu is a very important king in my culture, in my roots. So I can basically say I'm a descendant.
So you need
Yeah.
that book at your
Yeah.
school, don't you? You need the Kunda Kids books in Zimbabwe. You need those books in Zimbabwe. I should contact you. I should put you in contact with the author, with the publisher of the Kunda Kids series. Okay, thank you. Right, let's have one more book.
So I have Dolly May and the Magical Enchanted Garden. So basically, this is a fictional picture book, and it's about Dolly May and her trip to visit her grandma at Mount Olive. While she is there, her and her friends, what would I say, a discussion ensues between her grandma and her friends. And through that discussion, some historical figures come into the picture, because the grandmother is teaching them to dream big, teaching them that they can be anybody that they want to if they put their minds to it. And so, in the course of this discussion, she begins to reference famous Black historical figures all over the world and what their accomplishments are. For example, she talks about Martin Luther King, beautiful. And then she talks about Nelson Mandela. She also talks about, the scientists, Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, and Dorothy Vaughan, who were NASA scientists. They were mathematicians, I believe. There's a movie, a film about
Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know, that's my book for World Book Day. I'm excited for
Mm.
Katherine Johnson. No, Katherine Johnson.
Okay, awesome. So she also talks about Bessie Coleman, a pioneering female in the field of American civil aviation. Basically, this book is inspiring because it teaches children dream big. You can be who you want to be, and it introduces them to historical figures. And because it's a picture book, you can read it with a young child. And what I like to do sometimes when I come across books like this is that I like to go further, or try to go further a little, as much as they can handle. And do a little more research, do a little more inquiry into who the figures are, the people are, and go from there to teach them a little bit more about history.
So questions about that. What I really love about this book, and you said that right at the end, that what you like to do is do a further research on each of the characters, which is really good, because the way she has presented it, she's presented it as a story where every time they go to their grandmother and go to Grandma Magi's, she introduces another character, but she doesn't go into depth. She just uses it to inspire them that you can be like that person. You can be bigger. You can, you can dream big. You can aspire to, to be someone who has created something special or done something special. That's what I like about that book ever so much.
So like we just mentioned about the Dolly May book, you know, revisiting different characters, and they're all historical characters. Now, I'm sure there are different books about all these people like Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela, and now Katherine Johnson. But I mean, I was just thinking that, so there's a book about Katherine Johnson, but it's not a historical fiction book, it's actually a biography. So now, what is the difference between a biography and a historical fiction? Because she was actually really famous. You know, I think when the book came out, it was still a biography because she was still alive, but now she's late. So can that book actually count as a historical fiction book, or it's still a biography? So that's my question. Let's think about that.
Okay, good question. So the fiction element to the book probably in most cases has to do with other events that happen around, you know, around the story. So for instance, this story is called Dolly May and the Magical Enchanted Garden. It doesn't point to history. It points to a magical garden. You know, so by the time you purchase this book, you're already thinking about something magical. And the magic within the book is, I can be anything I dream to be. It just so happens that she has introduced historical figures that have achieved or that have invented something, you know. So that's the fiction around it. So it's what you create around, because at the end of the day, every story is about something real. It may not be about, you know, a historical person, but every single story we write is about our realities in life. So in a way, we could say, oh, all books are, you know, factual. But the way we present them, the aura that we bring into it, the essence that we bring into the story, the way we weave the story and plot the story, that is what makes it fiction, in my eyes. Okay, yes. Now let's go to the let's go to that other content you were going to share with us.
Okay, so Journey to Joburg. Okay. That one I read, it's a chapter book, and I read it with my 6-year-old son, and we did it as a series of bedtime stories. So it really does not have a historical figure in it, but the story takes place during a historical period. So the plot of the story is that a brother and sister go on a journey from their village to Johannesburg during the time of apartheid to get their mother, who was working as a nanny, of course, for a very rich Caucasian white family in the city of Johannesburg, because their baby sister was sick at the time in the hospital, and they were afraid that she would die, and they wanted to get their mother. So as you can see, this content sounds sort of heavy for a child because it deals with apartheid. It actually speaks about specifically the Soweto riots of that time, where students came out to protest against apartheid. But I really like that book because it helped to introduce a topic that was heavy, but in a fictional way. So the child or my children were invested in the story of, are these children going to find their mom and bring her back to the village? They were invested in this plot, but were also receiving information about a historical period. Yes, it was quite heavy, and I don't, everybody would be able to gauge the sensitivity of their child. But my son, who was 6, almost 7 at the time, he was able to, process the information, because I made sure to inform him that the story situated around a historical period of apartheid, and we do not have apartheid anymore. So the Soweto riots of the 1970s were covered in that book.
A quick question, because we're also running out of time. Quick question. Had he read Snowy Joy by the time he...
Yes.
Right. The reason why I asked that question is because you mentioned the word heavy. And
Yes.
when we had our event on Sunday, we also talked about gauging, you know your child better. And we talked about the conversation starting at home and how powerful it can be when those strong and difficult conversations start at home. So I give you kudos as a parent, so I give you kudos. Not every parent can do that. Not every parent. Rounding up, Sammy, have you got any words for us? And if it doesn't work, in terms of technical, I'll put it into the video. Go. Last words for us.
So I just want to say I'm so intrigued. I am intrigued. It's also especially those books bring out important things that the little ones need to know as they grow old, so that when times like war, famine, they come, it's not something that comes to them as a shock. It's something that disturbs their development. So that we also touch those things and also bring them to a child's understanding. So I like the way those authors are bringing it to a child's level, and yet also addressing the crucial points that every human being on this earth should understand. I also like the fact that there's a book that was mentioned about the children talking about, from Benin. Is it a book from Benin? I also love the fact that books have been brought again. I always believe in traditional way of teaching and traditional way of learning. Children nowadays are exposed to social media, television, but what about bringing series through a book? We are in promoting literacy. So I think the issue of a series through a book is amazing. It's beautiful, because that also gives the children the appreciation of reading. So kudos to you guys. Kudos.
That something is coming with the series. Something is coming. When's the next one? When's the next one? When's the next one? I think there's something powerful about historical fiction.
It keeps them wanting more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any last words? I mean, I've got a bit to read. If it doesn't, I'll add it. So 5 reasons why we need historical fiction. Number 1, it creates context for current events and how they have been shaped by the past. It provides exploration of human interaction and behavior in extreme circumstances. It educates about history and in a more compelling, memorable way. It helps build intergenerational divides by bringing to life, it helps bridge generational divides by bringing to life formative periods of older relatives. 5, it fires the imagination and builds a greater appreciation for changes locally and globally. And I'm sure there's so many other reasons why, especially historical fiction, rather than cramming the dates and when that happened, and having to do a test. If we can just learn history for the sake of knowledge, I think children will be more interested in history than for the sake of being tested all the time. When did that happen? I mean, it can happen. So I think it's just that phase of life that they're in. So historical fiction from 5 to 7-year-olds, I think that's brilliant for a child. The formal aspect of it can come in from maybe 8 years old. I don't know. What do you think? We're trying to deal with curriculum issues here. We're going into curriculum here.
7.
7 and above. Yes? Yes? When you say 7, what do you mean? 7.
Age 7.
And above, yes. It's just same here with the SATs. It's 7. They do their SATs at age 7. They do their first SATs at age 7, don't they? So I think hopefully we've had another interesting conversation. If anyone wants to add anything else, this is the time. If not, the next time we see it will be on YouTube. Please comment and share these videos because they're so important. They're so relevant. They're so important.
Absolutely.
And we might think people are not watching, people are not listening. Yes, go. Yes, I got one.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. But I can assure you that people are listening and they're watching this content and they're also taking things in. And, you know, any links to the books, let's have them, let's attach them to the recording so that people can go and purchase the books. No one has given us the job of advocating for them, you know. We haven't been commissioned or we're not being bribed to talk about people's books. So the more historical fiction we can find, let's just put that list together and I'll add it onto the description. So we shouldn't stop listening. We shouldn't stop looking. Sammy, all the way from Zimbabwe, it's been amazing to have you on today. We hope you'll come back again. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Sammy was one of our Snowy Joy griots in December. If I think Adeshala would have met her. So yes. Thank you. That's the end, the end of the recording.
Nice to meet you again, Sammy. Thank you.
Please comment and share these videos because they're so important. They're so relevant. They're so important.
Absolutely.
And we might think people are not watching, people are not listening. Yes, go. Yes, I got one.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. But I can assure you that people are listening and they're watching this content and they're also taking things in. And, you know, any links to the books, let's have them, let's attach them to the recording so that people can go and purchase the books. No one has given us the job of advocating for them, you know. We haven't been commissioned or we're not being bribed to talk about people's books. So the more historical fiction we can find, let's just put that list together and I'll add it onto the description. So we shouldn't stop listening. We shouldn't stop looking. Sammy, all the way from Zimbabwe, it's been amazing to have you on today. We hope you'll come back again. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Sammy was one of our Snowy Joy griots in December. If I think Adeshala would have met her. So yes. Thank you. That's the end of the recording.
Nice to meet you again, Sammy. Thank you.